जाने रहमत लाखों सलाम शम्अ बज़ में हिदायत।
अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह नहमदुहु व नस्तईनुहु व नस्तगफिरुहु व नु'मिनु बिही व नतवक्कलु अलैहि व नऊज़ु बिल्लाहि मिन शुरूरि अनफुसिना व मिन सय्यिआति अअमालिना। من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. قال الله عز وجل في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد: يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. صدق الله العظيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم وصل عليه. All praises for Allah Almighty, who created the heavens and the earth in perfect composition, in perfect order. All praises to Allah Almighty, whom we are all, and essentially this entire alameen is subservient to His will. And all praises to Allah Almighty, whom in His majesty has bestowed us with the Quran and a path to understanding and knowing Him. All praises to Allah Almighty, who blessed us with the guide, with whom if we follow we will know Him. And all praises to Allah Almighty, whom in giving us this guide He has blessed us as an ummah with the most noble of individuals, the greatest of creation, that individual to whom even time itself is an ummati of. Time itself is the ummati of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And for sure we are honoured to have that individual as our lamp in these very dark times upon the path to our Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. The verse I recited for you, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykum as-siyam kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. That fasting was prescribed for those before us, and it is prescribed for us as a means of establishing taqwa. So, we have fasted the month of Shahr Ramadan, and the objective of that month, first and foremost, for the many flowery reasons that many produce, for example, the health benefits, to empathize with people who don't have as much as we have. For sure, they are a part of everything in its great holistic image, as a whole thing. But the primary focus of Ramadan is taqwa. Taqwa being, of course, called consciousness. said in a lecture yesterday, the ulama, they say that the bird which will take you to Allah Almighty, it is propelled by two wings. One is love and the other is fear. To use taqwa in the context of God-fearingness, people who have taqwa are close to Allah Almighty, but closeness is not subject only to the remit of fear, but it is also dependent upon love, muhabba. This is why the awliya, they both loved and feared Allah, but such was their love that as they grew in that love, they ceased, their fear would reduce because they knew of their love of their Lord. They would become immersed in that love. And they are both the wings of this bird. But without one or the other, the bird would spin. It would never fly. It would be a handicapped bird. It would never be able to fly. It would never lift off the ground. And you're in the last 10 days. And this is the 10 days which will grant us freedom from Jahannam, from the Nar. Inshallah, Allah Almighty is merciful to us. And you're, illa mashallah, if I'm not mistaken, most of you are sitting the full 10 days of i'tikaf, which is a great blessing in itself. But what is the objective of i'tikaf? Firstly, it's not to have a chat and chill out with your mates. It's not haram, nor will it break your i'tikaf to discuss and to talk about the matters of the world. It does not break i'tikaf. In fact, the mas'ala pertaining to i'tikaf is that you can still conduct your business within the masajid. You just cannot leave the boundary of the masajid. But it has to be remembered that it's very easy in 10 days, if you do not have the correct understanding of your point of being here, if you don't understand the reason you're sitting i'tikaf, you'll become bored. And you'll essentially immerse yourself in the dunya within the masjid. How many of you brought your phones? How many of you got a smartphone? How many of you got Facebook on your smartphone? How many of you use your Facebook since you're being in the masjid? Good. If you don't focus properly over i'tikaf, you will be inclined to use these things. You'll be inclined to listen to music. You will be inclined to talk about things and have a laugh and joke with your mates. Be careful. The purpose of this brief dars is that I want to talk about essentially the whole ethos of not only i'tikaf but Shahrul Ramadan. Because, as I said briefly yesterday, we come into this month, everything is a lot easier. They say that if you don't pray in this month, know that it is not the evil of shaitan that stops you praying, it's the evil of yourself. We come into this month and everything is a lot easier. Those people who have never prayed all year are able to read 5 times salah. Those people who abuse their parents have adab. Those people who just go for work every day, go for dunya, go for money every day, it's lessened. They have more heart to deen. People are sat in the masjid who would never be in the masjid, yet here they are going to spend all 10 days in the masjid, away from their family, away from their friends, away from the TV, the music, the radio, everything. Because it's Ramadan. But, firstly, how many of you intend to read the Nawafil Salah? Yani Tahajjud, Awaibi, Ishraq. You know these Nawafil that you can read, Duhar. These Nawafil you can read. How many of you have the niyyah to do that whilst you're in i'tikaf? Put your hands up. 1, 2, okay. The position is, if you have qada, in my opinion, if you have qada, you shouldn't even be reading Salatul Tarawih. Because in our fiqh, to make up the qada is from the wujub. It's wajib. At best, according to some ulama, at best, Tarawih is sunnati muwaqqida. But it's not wajib. Other ulama have said ghayr muwaqqida, and other ulama even mustahab. There's a whole breadth of rulings on the issue of Salatul Tarawih. The point is, we come into the masajid, we come in with many qada, but we think that we should focus on these nawafil ibadah, the awaibi, tahajjud, ishraq, etc., etc., etc. We have this view. But this view is devoid of reality. You see, fine, there is barakah. Allah wa Rasuluhu alam. know the barakah in reading these salah whilst you have qada waiting. But for sure, the barakah will not be anything near to what you could achieve if you were to first focus on replenishing your qada, pulling your prayers that you have missed up to date. If you have qada and you're doing i'tikaf, you should use this time, first and foremost, before anything else, you should use this time to catch up on your salah. You shouldn't be doing anything else. It's nawafil. Finish the wuju. Prioritize. You use this time well. You're away from the world. You're away from the distractions of life. Use this time to fulfill certain objectives which are long outstanding, such as the qada. Secondly, whilst you are here, replenish your niyat all the time. Constantly replenish your niyat. Don't just sit, constantly be remaking the niyat of i'tikaf. Because you may break your i'tikaf and not realize. So constantly renew the niyat, constantly renew the intention for your i'tikaf. It's said that the pious would constantly do tajdeed iman. They would constantly renew their iman as a caution, as a precaution. They wouldn't, they don't, I'm not suggesting that these great pious, noble individuals did it because they actually left the fold of deen. But as a precaution, they would be constantly renewing their iman. This was, their heart. In the same way, whilst you're in here today, renew your niyat persistently throughout the 10 days, just to be safe, as a precautionary matter. Try not to spend too much time out of the areas of sujood. There are opinions, for example, that the whole masjid is jaiz for you to walk around during i'tikaf, not just limited to these areas. But try not to sort of hang around the corridors. Try not to let people who aren't sitting i'tikaf take too much of your time. Because at the end of the day, you're here for a purpose. So i'tikaf, first and foremost, qada. Secondly, renew your intention. Remind yourself while you're here. Not only will this protect you from engrossing your heart in the dunya, but in renewing your intention, it will preserve your i'tikaf. And prioritize your time and don't hang around wasting it in corridors and talking to people about dunya. The more you engross in the dunya, this whole period of time is to attach you to Allah Almighty. If your heart is within the dunya, it will never be attached to your Lord. If your heart is, if its residency is in the dunya, and I'm talking about the spiritual heart, if it resides in the dunya, you will never have attachment with your Lord. And this is why the awliya, they would say that the key is not, people have this crazy idea. If I wear rags, and if I drive a banger, or whatever, if I starve myself, if I do all of these things, this is a sign of taqwa. Why? Because I am from those people who are in a state of poverty. I am faqir. No. This state of being faqir is a state of heart. It's not a state of, it can in its literal sense be a state of what you own in possessions. But let me give you the parable of the two students who left madrasa. And it taught me a lot, this parable, when it was taught to me by my teachers. One student was very wealthy. So he lived in the city, he bought a mansion. The other student was very poor. He was a complete opposite to his friend. And he had a little shack. And all he had to his name. I mean, whether this is true or based on some sort of truth, Allah knows best. But we don't tell these stories because they're stemmed in a sanad which is sahih. And a chain of narrators has brought it to us, it's sahih, it's history. No. We tell these stories because within these stories there are intrinsic lessons to be learned for our attitude and notion of life. So the second student was very poor. And all he had to his name was a fishing rod. All he had. And they both then started teaching people in their locality. So the first student was in the city, and the second student was by this river, with his fishing rod. And the second student sent one of his students, he goes, my colleague is in such and such a place, go and give him my salam. So, you'll have to forgive me, by the way. I'm extremely tired. If I keep yawning, it's not good to yawn. Try to control your yawns. But please forgive the rudeness of my yawning. I am absolutely exhausted. So the second student sent to his colleague, one of his own pupils, go and give my salam in good regard. So the student went. He saw the house of this colleague, mansion, it was glorious. And he went up to his colleague and said, you know, your old friend, your acquaintance, your class fellow has given salam, you know, Mubarak and good tidings and whatnot. So anyway, you know, as they do. The colleague smiled, returned the salam, and then he said, please tell my old friend that he should detach his heart from the world. Now can you imagine, like in this day and age, if you say something about someone's ustad, now you'll have the mafia at your door. You know, people are really like emotional over this sort of stuff. You can't even like scholastically criticize someone without having your legs cut off. So the student was really offended, deeply offended. He went back to his teacher and he said, you know, Ustad, he really offended me, he offended you, he insulted you, what did he say? And he said, the student related what had been said. The student related what had been said. He said, oh Ustad, he said that you need to detach your heart from the world. And obviously in the student's mind, he looked at things superficially. How could he say to my Ustad, detach your heart from the world, when he's living in a mansion? And our Ustad's living in a shack, as you do. And the Ustad started to cry. And the student was really taken aback. So he asked his teacher, why are you crying? He goes, he's right, he's told the truth. My heart is attached to the world. And the student asked, how, when you have so little? And the Ustad said, I may have so little, but if I was to lose this fishing rod, where it's the only means by which I can get my daily food, if I was to lose this fishing rod, I would lose my mind. I would grieve the loss of this fishing rod. Because his heart is attached to it. It doesn't matter how small an object, and the key to this story is this, it doesn't matter how small the object is that your heart attaches to. If your heart has attachment to it, you're attached to dunya. Anything at all. It could be this scarf. It could be my car, which I don't drive because I don't drive. It could be my house. It could be my pet dog. It could be anything. If my heart is attached to it to such an extent that I feel almost dependent upon it, then my heart is attached to the dunya. The most common form of attachment is wealth. And the more you have, the more stingy and confused people become. But, nevertheless, anything at all, great or small, if your heart is incumbent and dependent and contingent upon it, then your heart is dwelling within the dunya. And it will never extend beyond the dunya. And this is why people live their whole lives without ever having that relationship, that true relationship with their Lord Almighty. Because they don't realize it, but their heart is within this dunya. Their heart is attached to this world in some means which they haven't recognized. So you need to look through your lives, because you see, it's not just wealth, it's family also. Having attachment to family is good, illa mashallah. But dependency on anything other than Allah Almighty negates your tawheed. Now when I say that, I'm not saying it makes you a kafir. I'm not using it in a literal sense. What I mean is that your tawheed, part of your tawheed is knowing. What is it that we say when people pass away? After Allah ni marzi. Come on, you see it all over Facebook. You know the answer to this, don't sit there silently.
Rest in peace.
No, you don't say that. But you do, if it's Muslim. Huh? Yeah, what's the phrase in Arabic? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. You know this phrase, isn't it? We use this only in the context of funerals, isn't it? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Someone's died. Oh, Allah ni mazi, inna lillahi wa raji'un. Like, it's like lip service. It has no reality. It's just lip service. It's like if you don't say it, you think you may offend somebody. But that is a greater reality. And it's through the reality of this single statement that you detach your heart from the world. Because everything is from Him, and everything in its entirety will return to Him. You have nothing. This existence is transient. It's a journey. You have absolutely zilch, squash. Nothing is yours. Everything has come from Him. And for sure, whether it happens in the dunya or not, everything will go back to Him. Whether that's within your lifetime or as you die, you yourself return to Him. Everything will go back to Allah Almighty. And this is the key to tawakkul. This is the key to reliance upon God Almighty. And this is the key to detaching your heart from the world. And it's in these 10 days that you should focus your attention on detaching your heart from the world. Because it's in these 10 days that you have detached your heart from the dunya. But the level of that detachment is subjected to your outlook and mindset throughout the entire course of these proceedings. If you play around on your phone, listen to music, play on Facebook, play your games, wrestle with each other, chill out, whatever it is, find any excuse not to do that which you're here to do, then you're not going to see the benefit of it. And you basically just spent 10 days in the masjid. But if you want to see a reality from this, then you need to understand that you need to make this notion a reality within yourselves. You need to extend it beyond lip service. One Shaykh told me that you can say Allah on your tongue 1,000 times, or even 10,000 times, or even 100,000 times, but your heart is not reciting in alignment with your tongue. But if your heart was to recite the name of Allah, if your heart was to beat to His name just once, it is worth more than 10,000 wird upon your tongue. And this is what we should strive for. If you take any reality away from this whole process of i'tikaf, it is that you focus on trying to make your heart beat to the name of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. So this involves sitting for a start, whether it is in tashahhud position or whether it's in a position that is respectful to the masjid. Let me show you a position. For example, to sit like this is not respectful. To sit like this is not respectful. You have adab within the masjid, so you shouldn't sit like this. The most preferable position to sit when you're in a mosque is the tashahhud position, or in this position, or like this. These are the most preferable positions to sit because they have adab. Even though you're clothed, you have to be aware of how you're sat. When you sit like with your legs out, your legs open, although you're not exposing yourself, it's like exposing yourself. And inside the house of Allah Almighty, you have to have greater levels of adab. So, which is why, for example, to sort of demonstrate this point in Fatawa Ridwiya, Ala Hazrat, he says that to listen to music is haram. Listening to music is haram. But to listen to music in a masjid is more haram. It's a greater haram. Because it's a masjid. And being in a masjid requires greater adab. So for example, let me think of how to put this without being a bit crude. We all need to, like, it's human nature. People pass wind, isn't it? It may unfortunately happen in salah, in jamaat. It may unfortunately happen whilst you're the imam of that jamaat. I mean, it's never happened to me, shukr, alhamdulillah. But the point is, I mean, because that's a bit sort of like, because everyone's going to know what's just gone down, isn't it, when you've got to put someone forward. But the point is, if you feel that feeling, don't think that there's no one around. I'm just going to quickly like, there we go. They open the window and like, spread it. No. Leave the area of sujood. Go to the area where you do wudu. Go to the area where you go to the toilet, do it there. Don't do it in the masjid. As much as you can control it. I mean, if you're unfortunate, you have to be sleeping next to someone who had kofta and didn't agree with them. And they're asleep and you're getting hit by it. I mean, they can't help. You can't slap them on the face and say, go to the toilet. I mean, you can't wake them up. But if you're in control of yourself, if you're in a state of sense, you're awake, don't do things like this in the masjid. Don't swear in the masjid. You have to be aware, whatever sin you would do outside, when you do it in the house of Allah, it's a greater sin. It's a greater sin. So have that heightened awareness of your place. Have that and also, another thing, on the verse in the Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah does not burden a soul with more than it can bear. Hazrat Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he comments on this verse. He says that this verse means that Allah will not hold you to account for your thoughts. So you could be outside and you could be, you could think to yourself, you see that girl, I really like her, I want to do X, Y, and Z. Maazallah. You see that pub, I wonder what alcohol tastes like. Maybe I should like have a try. You know, my mum asked me to do this. Should I do it? Shouldn't I do it? Any sin which you think of, yeah, you could think of the most heinous sins. You could go out there right now and think of many ways in which you could fantasize about killing me. I would suggest you see a psychiatrist if that is the case, because you're probably a psychopath. But you can think of all the different ways of killing me. As long as you don't kill me, Allah will not ask you about it. Any sin, no matter how great, as long as you do not make the sincere intention to do sincere intention, it's not really sincere. As long as you don't make the cemented intention to do that sin, you will not be asked about it. However, that does not apply in a masjid. This is what Ibn Abbas said, radiallahu anhu. The place where this doesn't apply is in a masjid. Yani Allah will hold you to account for your thoughts that you have in a masjid. This is the level of consciousness that we need to have when we're in the house of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. We need to be fully aware of our surroundings when we're conducting i'tikaf. We have to be so immersed into this reality that even our thoughts are controlled. And this is why there are many different types of fasting. Okay? There are many different types of fasting. For example, Hujjatul Islam Imam Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala, he talks about the 3 different types of fasting. The first type of fasting is that fasting which is fard, which every Muslim has to do in Ramadan. Or that fasting which is wajib. Yani when you have made the intention to keep a fast, you've kept a fast and then you've broken the fast, which was nafil. It's wajib to make that fast up. Okay? You don't have to do the kafara. If you break a nafil fast, you don't have to fast for 60 days. But you have to make it up. These fasts you have to do. This is the first level of fasting. The second level of fasting is the sunnah, to fast on Mondays and to fast on Thursdays. Then the third level of fasting is where you fast every other day. And this is the fast of Hazrat Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam. This is his sunnah. And this third level of fasting is the greatest level of fasting. To fast perpetually is makruh. It's makruh. Because when you constantly fast, you become attuned to it. People often say, right, I need to eat this at Sehri time so that I don't get hungry. Like, brother, that's kind of the point of fasting. You're meant to feel that hunger. You're meant to feel that thirst. If you drink 6 gallons of water to stop you feeling that, it's just going to be a normal day, where essentially you've delayed eating and drinking. The whole point is you're meant to feel the effects of fasting. You're not going to establish taqwa by feeling the same way that you feel every day. And just thinking, mashallah, well basically I didn't eat from sunrise to sunset. That's not going to establish fasting. To fast, you need to feel the effects. You need to feel that tang, that prang of hunger, that thirst, that dehydration. Because when you feel it, your mind will alter. And this is why Allah Almighty said that fasting is for me. No one else, except in Ramadan, no one else knows when you're fasting. So it's for Allah Almighty. This is why it's got its own maqam. Out of all of the other ibadat, fasting has its own maqam. Because only Allah and you know you're fasting. You can't be ostentatious with fasting. You know, salah, you read salah, Babaji walks in, you slow it down because you want to marry his daughter. Yeah, you want to... So all of a sudden it's like from Maulana Ferrari, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, to Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. And then you sort of pick up your voice and Maulana can hear you. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Because you want to impress him. This is minor shirk, firstly. But secondly, this is the susceptibility of your worship being for others. Okay? This is the susceptibility of that ibadah being for other people. Because we do it, we slow it down, we elongate it, we focus on it more. The moment you do that, your ibadah is worthless. But fasting, you can't do that. Unless you go up to someone and say, oh, that's my fasting breath. Or you go up to someone and say, I'm fasting today. The only way you can destroy that is if you tell someone. But even when people fast and then someone goes, and do you want to go for food? You don't have to be like, Because then the nafs kicks in. Your nafsi amara want you to say, no, because I am fasting. Destroyed your worship. You could just say no. Why, brother? Why do you want to eat drink? Just say, you know what, I've ate too much today. I'm trying to cut down on what I'm eating. In fact, to do that would be better for you because it negates the fact of fasting. I've ate today. I've drank today. It's sort of in their mind, they won't think you're fasting. It makes that worship more secure. Which is why you should read your fard in the masjid, but you should read your sunnah at home. It's the sunnah of the Prophet. You read your sunnah and your nawafil at home. Firstly, it brings barakah to the house, but secondly, it protects your ibadah from riyah, from ostentation, from minor shirk. Because you won't be thinking, right, I'm going to do these sunnah now here so everyone else can see I'm reading my sunnah. You would do it at home, you would be on your own. In fact, it would be better for your nafs. Why? Because people will be thinking, subhanAllah, look at this guy, he comes for his fard and he goes home and he doesn't even read his sunnah. But they don't know your reality. Allah knows your reality. Which is why when people do that, you should give them husn al-zan. You should assume the best. Assume that they're going home to read it, and they don't want to read it in the masjid to protect themselves. Anyway, we went a little bit off on a tangent there. So, fasting to establish taqwa. Okay? So these people, they eat and drink so much at sahri time so they don't feel hungry. That's not the point. You're meant to feel it, because when you feel it, you have that God consciousness. You become aware, I'm doing this for Allah. That's why I'm doing it. And that's where then your mind starts to change how it thinks. So there are the 3 levels of fasting. And then Imam Ghazali continues, there are 3 secrets of fasting to each level. The first is to fast with your stomachs and your private parts. You can't eat or drink, and you can't have relations with your wife during daylight hours. Okay? After that, everything is fine. But before that, you can't do it. Then, there is the second type of fasting, that you fast with your limbs. This is, you don't speak except that it is halal. You don't walk to something except that it is halal. You do not consume something for iftar and sahri except that you know for with yaqeen it is halal. You do not look to that which is haram. You do not hear that which is haram. You do not touch or interact with that which is haram. This is the second level of fasting. Because your fast, in a fiqh sense, swearing will not break your fast. In a fiqh sense, your fast is valid. But in a spiritual sense, your fast is broken. In a spiritual sense, if you do ghibah, your fast is broken. You've damaged your fast. You've negated almost your fast. What's the point? Fasting isn't just to feel hungry. Fasting is to establish taqwa, God consciousness, to be aware of God. This is what consciousness is, that you have an awareness of God. What sort of awareness will you have if you're swearing? What sort of awareness will you have if you're doing ghibah? What sort of awareness will you have if you go out into the street and you're like a dog waiting for food whenever you see a girl? What awareness will you have? That's not awareness. Because if you had awareness when you looked at that girl, Allah would be in your mind, you would look down. Yeah? When you listen to Rihanna and Tupac, you would have awareness of Allah Almighty. And you would stop. Because Allah will be in your mind. This is awareness. This is taqwa. So, the second secret to fasting is that you fast with your limbs, not just your mouth, not just with your stomach and your private parts. Your entire body is fasting. Your entire body abstains from sins. Then there is the third level of fasting. This is the level of the elite, the awliya of Allah, those people who have proximity to their Lord. They fast with their stomachs and their private parts, they fast with their limbs, and they fast with their hearts and their minds. Even their hearts and minds fast. Yani, they do not think of that which is haram. They do not feel that which is haram. Everything they think is good. Everything they think is with barakah. This is the final level. And in these 10 days, I'm not saying that you're going to be able to sort of come in and establish that. But in these 10 days, you should start attuning yourself to this mindset. This is what you should be aiming for. That you actually control the nature of your thoughts. You control the nature of your heart. So that your heart thinks good. Your mind thinks good. Because if you master these 2 facets of your creation, yani your heart and mind, your aql and your qalb, if you master these 2 facets of yourself, your ins, your bashariyat, everything else will fast automatically. If you can't even think haram, there's no way you're going to look at some chick down the street. If you can't even think haram, the moment, I'll tell you how to try and control this in a moment, but the moment something comes into your mind which is, the moment you interact with something which is haram, because you're not even thinking haram, you would move away from it. Because your mind is indulged in Allah Almighty. How? It's like anything else. You have to work at it. You can't just decide today, right, I'm never going to think of haram again. And then tomorrow you wake up, you are a wali. The next day you wake up, you are a peer. And the next day you wake up, you're a multi-millionaire because you're selling ta'weez. No, it's not how it works. The ta'weez bit can work like that if you're into that sort of thing, but generally speaking, it's not how it works. So, I want to give you a few things to do. Whenever something wrong comes into your mind, in your mind you say astaghfirullah. The moment something wrong comes, and then I'll leave this next bit to you. Depending upon the level of wrongness that comes into your mind. Let's say the sin that you think of as a minor sin. Astaghfirullah al-Azim. Astaghfirullah al-Azim. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Astaghfirullah al-Azim. Astaghfirullah al-Azim. Until that thought, until all you're thinking is astaghfirullah. The thought isn't there anymore, all you're thinking is astaghfirullah. That takes a lot of time to get used to. So, let's try it now. Let's try it now. I'm not going to tell you to think of something haram, ma'azallah, but I want you to think of something. Okay? Think of anything. Put something in your mind now. Close your eyes and put something in your mind. Just think of something. This is something that I do to help me sleep. I developed it when I was about 14 years old because I couldn't sleep. So this is something I use to help me sleep. And I'll explain how I use it to help me sleep off camera because it's not appropriate to this lecture. But for now, I'm going to apply this same technique that I use to sleep in helping you control. So if you close your eyes and you've got something in your mind, imagine that thought is going through your mind right now. Imagine in your mind two railroads, one above the other, parallel railroads, one directly above the other. And imagine on that railroad, or those railroads, trains. This is the most bizarre thing you're about to feel, but imagine trains. And without understanding how, you know that whatever you're thinking is on that train. You're looking at that train is in your mind's eye. But whatever you're thinking is on that train. Now drive that train out of your mind's eye. So all you can see now is blackness. And focus on that state of emptiness in your mind. All you can hear is my voice, and all you can see is blackness. You're not thinking anything. You're not feeling anything. You feel this overwhelming sense of emptiness. And now, all you can hear in your mind, Astaghfirullah, Astaghfirullah, Astaghfirullah. And repeat it, Astaghfirullah, Astaghfirullah. In your mind, Astaghfirullah, 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 Astaghfirullah. And if something else comes into your mind, you go right the way back to the beginning. You imagine two railroads. And you clear your mind again, Astaghfirullah, until eventually you don't need the railroads. That's just a modus of being able to clear your mind. Eventually you can just clear it, and then you fill it with the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it doesn't have to just be Astaghfirullah. It could be La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyum. Anything. It may have worked for you, it may not have worked for you. This is what I do, and it works for me. And it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of getting used to. But if you can clear your head of whatever it is you're thinking instantaneously, and then you fill your mind with the dhikr of Allah Almighty, what will happen in the process of this is that as time goes by and you get older and older and older, you will become more mastered at doing it. So that literally the moment something bad comes into your mind, it will instantly clear and you will fill your head with the dhikr of Allah. To the point where nothing bad will even enter your mind anymore. This is the ultimate objective. That you completely stop anything bad coming into your mind. So in these 10 days of i'tikaf, focus on clearing your mind whenever something negative comes into it. Even if it's not something haram, it's dunya. If something of the dunya comes into your mind, do this. And fill your mind with the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? How many of you did it work for on the first occasion? Does that mean no one, or does that mean people don't want to answer? Anyone? Feedback? No? Don't be afraid to say no. Many other things. Sort of? No? Psychic relationship. We're going to have to get out of this habit as the day goes on. There's nothing wrong in answering. If it didn't work, just see me. There's a few other things that we could perhaps do. But the whole objective is to clear your mind so that you can recite the dhikr of Allah in place of the thoughts of dunya and sin. This is the heightened state of fasting, that you even control the thoughts of your mind. And that's what we should be doing now in these 10 days of i'tikaf. Also, it's all good and well, we've come here, we're doing a lot of dhikr, a lot of remembrance of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. But what is dhikr without fikr? You need to think and reflect. This isn't just a time for you to come in and go out the same person that you were. You have to come in and you have to transform yourself. You have to look at what you were, and you have to look at facets of that, because you're not going to be able to come in and come out a totally different person. But the point is, you come in and you look at some key problems in your life, and you use this time to fix it. You use this time to sort it out, to think about it. Where are you going with your life? Who are your friends? Who are those people you're surrounding yourself with? Are they good for you? Are they bad for you? Why are you behaving in a certain way? Why do you do certain things? Do you truly believe in Allah Almighty? And if the answer is no, and you have to be honest with yourself, come and see me. If the answer is I don't know, or if the answer is no, see me. I'm not going to judge you. We'll try and work on it. But if the answer is yes, I do believe in Allah Almighty, then you have to ask yourself the question, why am I behaving like this? Because in believing in Allah Almighty, that means there will come a day when I will be judged by Him. In believing in Allah Almighty, there will come a day when you're in your grave. In believing in Allah Almighty, there will come a day when, when we look at CCTV, back in the time of the Arabs, they had no idea, they could not comprehend how, that all our deeds will be on show for everyone. But it's not really hard to believe when we look and we have CCTV and we can watch footage from a whole year, what everyone has been doing, observed by that camera. In the same way you watch a screen and you will see everything going on. On Yawm al-Qiyamah, everyone will be watching everything you've ever done. Every good, every bad. Everything you have ever done, indiscriminately, everyone will see. Those things you did in private, thinking that no one else knew, those things that you did knowingly and in public, everything will be for the entire alameen to see. And it may not hit you yet, which is fine. But try and understand that not only will your family see, not only will your friends see, not only will billions of strangers that you've never met see, but the Prophet ﷺ, forget seeing on Yawm al-Qiyamah, the Prophet ﷺ is observing you sin now. He sees you sin right now. And He makes tawbah for you on your behalf. He asks Allah to forgive you. And this is established in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Have that reality in your mind. Use these 10 days to transform. Use Shahr Ramadan to transform. Don't be the same person coming in as you are going out, because then you've wasted it. And if you haven't changed anything about your life yet, mashallah, brother has a pen and paper. Those of you who don't have a pen and paper, see if this brother will give you a scrap of paper and allow you to borrow his pen throughout the course of these 10 days. And write down, keep it to yourself, but write down 4 things you want to change. Keep it to yourself. But know, these are 4 things that I can change. These are 4 things that if I change, I will stay upon it. These are 4 things that I will change before the end of these 10 days. Then come next Ramadan, 4 more things. Next Ramadan, 4 more things. And you will spiritually elevate. And you will spiritually grow. In the same way when you put a seed in the floor, you nurture that seed. You nurture it. You allow it to grow. You treat a flower, if you're a gardener, you treat a flower very much like a child, because you have love for it. In the same way that you have to treat yourself as that seed, you have to nurture yourself, you have to enable yourself to grow. But you have to supply everything that you need. And one of those things you need is fiqh, reflection. You need to think. You need to understand what it is that you need to change about yourself. Maybe it's your friends. Maybe you need to change your friendship circles. Because you know, companionship will, if you are a companion of the awliya, then it will make you from amongst the awliya. And if you are the companion of kuffar, you know where you're headed. Because you become the people to whom you share companionship with. Very rare. This is why the Prophet ﷺ spoke so much about who your friends are and who you spend your time with, who you have the suhbah of. Because, how do I do this without being crude? You have a pile of poo. I can only use this as an example, because I can't think of anything that smells worse than that. You have a pile of poo. And you have a single rose petal which smells beautiful. And you put that rose petal in the center of the poo. Now you ain't going to pick that poo up and, wow, it smells like the roses. In fact, you would take that rose out and that rose would smell like the poo. But then if you have a tiny piece of poop and you surround it by roses and you smell, all you will smell is the roses. I've met Muslims who start practicing after a few months and then they think, I want to change the world. I want to do the da'wah, I want to do the tabligh, I want to go out there and I want to bring people to it. So what they do is they go into a group of friends who are all dodgy, right, dodgy buggers. And guess what? They slip and they become that person. Then I've met Muslims who are the worst, some of the worst people. And they change their friendship circle. And they befriend people who are practicing. They befriend people who are pious, neck people. People who have fear for Allah and His Rasul. And within days, forget weeks, forget months, forget years, within days, that person has changed their life. Because of the companionship. That is the power of companionship. People think, you know what, I smoke drugs, I drink alcohol, I have girlfriends. These are my choices. These are choices that I have made. I am in control of my life. No, you're actually the product of your environment. Don't believe for a second that you're truly the basis of that decision to drink and to smoke and to have a girlfriend. Yes, you will be responsible for it because yes, you chose, at the crux of the moment, you chose to engage in it. At the crucial point, you chose to engage in it. But do not be deluded. If you were surrounded by people who were good people, who were practicing Muslims, you would not be in the position you are in. You are in that position because of who you're surrounded by. Therefore, take the opportunity to use this time to reflect on every facet of your life. Whether you're here like, mashallah, these few brothers for a single day, or whether you're here for the full 10. Use this time now to critically analyze your life. What do I want? Do I want to be this Islamic, you know, we say people who are on the dole, we call them bums, which isn't really fair because some people genuinely can't help it. But don't be an Islamic bum. Yani, don't waste your time. Don't be a DOS in deen. Sort yourself out and use this time now to do it. Okay? May Allah accept these few words. I'm sorry, it was an hour, it was a bit long for this sort of thing. I pray I haven't bored you. I pray that I've given you enough to think about now, from this point forward, before our next dars. I pray that you've had enough to think about, enough to reflect upon, and enough to consider that when you go away today, you're not going to waste your time laughing and joking, but you're going to do a bit of thinking. And you're going to try and clear your mind. Because when we come to do, because it's advertised as 4 dars, I'm not doing 4 dars today. They're going to be dhikr as well, which will have a small dars at the beginning, but then mainly dhikr. I want you to try and clear your mind, especially for the dhikr. Because if anything, if you can make your heart beat to the name of Allah and His beloved once, subhanAllah, it will take you outside of this universe. So, I want you to use this time now and focus, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum wa jazakallahu khairan. Alhamdulillah.
जाने रहमत लाखों सलाम शम्अ बज़ में हिदायत लाखों सलाम